I'm a technology buff. So what happens to me oftentimes is that I use taxis in Bucharest and I think, wow, we'd be much better off having Google driverless cars taking us from point A to point B. Because what happens with driverless cars is that they're a complex system of cameras, GPS, laser radar, software that's geared to doing two things better than humans, which is one, keeping us safe, so no collisions, and two, using Waze or a compatible sort of technology to move us faster from point A to point B, which you probably know doesn't really happen with taxis all the time. So I generally think about this often when I'm in a taxi and running late. I was in such a situation a few months ago. So I hop on a cab. I needed to get to the university really, really fast. And because I was late and I was getting moody, I was thinking about, wow, I'd be much better off with a driverless car. But somehow I start talking to the guy, to the driver, and it turns out that he's the sweetest guy in the world. He tells me about his two daughters. He tells me that he wants to send them to the university where I was giving a talk. He tells me that that's why he's working 12 hours a day, because he wants to give them a better life than the life that he had. Otherwise, he'd be just at home playing the guitar or writing. He wanted to be a writer. Now, when I heard that and I started empathizing, I stopped thinking about the driverless car and started thinking that if my dreams come true, if taxis indeed start being driverless cars, this guy is going to be left without a job. And it's not just him. It's millions of people like that. Look, technology is amazing. Just think about the small device that probably most of you have in your pockets. It's the smartphone. The smartphone puts together all these different kinds of gadgets and thingies that are very useful to our lives. It's the telephone that you used to have in your bedroom. It's the agenda where you jotted down your meetings. It's every book that you've ever read or you will probably ever read. It's an alarm clock, it's a laptop, it's many, many other things like that, all put together in a device that nowadays you can buy for less than $10. Less than $10. Now, technology truly revolutionizes the way society works. And it does so because it itself is part of the revolution. We call it a revolution because it actually is so. Historically, we've had a bunch of them. The first industrial revolution was about using the steam engine in the 18th century. The second industrial revolution in the 19th century was about using electricity and the car, and later on the airplane. The third industrial revolution was started in the 1960s with digital technology, computers, and then the internet. Now what we're living is the fourth industrial revolution, this revolution that's bringing us Google or driverless cars in general. It's bringing us artificial intelligence, virtual reality, 3D printing, and many, many other things that you're going to be hearing about today. But there's also a catch to it. It makes our lives better as a society. But for some of us, it makes our lives a bit weirder. Think about it. The driverless car is going to leave drivers like my taxi driver without a job, just like cars in general left train engineers without a job, just like train engineers left horse carriage drivers without a job. And it's cyclical. It happens. You can't do anything about it. It's actually good that it happens. But what happens to the people who get left behind? Let me offer you some scale on that. In the Western world, which is North America and the European Union, there's about 10 million people who drive for a living. They drive cars, they drive lorries, they drive trucks, they drive for a living. Their jobs are going to be vulnerable to automation. And let's think of some other jobs, like retail salesperson, like office clerk, cashier, server in a restaurant. There's 35 million people working in those jobs at this point. A recent Oxford University study says that about 50% of the jobs in the Western world are vulnerable to automation. That's about 200 million jobs. 200 million jobs, and they're not going to go away just like that. What's going to happen is that employers are going to realize that a machine can do the same job in the same way, or maybe even better, for less money. So these people, these 200 million jobs, are going to start to be paid less and less. And if you think that today's world has social tension, think about what would happen if we get there. Think about all the Occupy Wall Street's protests. Think about all the populism, the vulnerability to the populism that we might have. I should know that, because my name is Dani Sandu. I'm a development sociologist. My job is to look at how economic development changes the way we live our lives, changes the way everybody lives their lives. And it's easiest to follow this with the people who are marginalized, because these 200 million people are going to feel marginalized. They're going to feel left behind, hopeless to participate in an economy, in a new economy. Fourth industrial revolution that will create jobs. But these jobs are going to be highly technical. They're going to require years and years of university schooling or on-the-job training that they're not going to be able to get. They're not going to be able to get as soon as they need to. Now, I've been studying marginalization for a long time. What I can tell you is that it's a growing thing. And the funniest thing is that all of this happens because we're living in the best moment of our history. Right now, it's estimated that about 10% of the world's population has a college degree. It's probably the first time in history when we have more college graduates than people living in extreme poverty. Think about that. There's 200 million people who have a master's degree, 20 million people who have a PhD. Hopefully not all of them are plagiarized, but think about that. Think about these 20 million people, these 200 million people. This is more than the population. 20 million is twice the size of the population of Great Britain during the first industrial revolution, which changed the way we live altogether. Because there's so many of them, it's obvious that their creations and their research is going to revolutionize everything. And this revolution would be broader and more significant than anything we've ever seen before. Now, I know what you must be asking yourselves. I ask myself the same thing. Is my job at risk? What am I going to do? Am I going to need to look for something else to do? And there are many ways to answer this, but there's a rule of thumb that I use, which is, what does your job entail? What do you do at work? Do you figure out an algorithm, a pattern of actions that you have to apply to various sorts of situations in various sorts of moments, maybe in various sorts of places? If that's your job, I'm sorry, but a computer is probably going to do it better than you. I apologize. And history shows us that. There's no more elevator operators, there's no more telephone operators. But if instead your job is about problem solving, about taking an idea and twisting it around and looking for ways to solve that thing, maybe not always finding a solution, but using creativity and inventiveness to get at what your ultimate goal is, then maybe your job will endure. Think about it. Creativity. If you work in advertising, your job is probably not going to be able to be automated that soon. If you deal with complex social interactions, if you're a politician, I apologize. If you're a lawyer or a judge, then your job is going to be around. If you're a plumber, your job is probably going to be around. And that's one of the few examples of jobs that are going to be around even without the higher level of education. But let me get to why I'm telling you this. Because if you listen to this, you might think that I'm whining and I'm saying, boo technology. I hate it. It's going to make our lives a hell. That's not true. I love it. Told you I was a technology buff. The thing is that even though my presentation up until now might have said that technology is a threat, it's not. Technology is an opportunity, and the fourth industrial revolution is an opportunity to change the way that we work as a society. Change it completely, and change it even for the people who haven't gone through the third industrial revolution, who don't have electricity. The people who've never seen a car. We can change the world for them also. And one of the ideas that I'd like to focus on, and it's an idea that you're going to start hearing, maybe again today and maybe in the future also, it's the universal or unconditional basic income. Its main idea is to harness the prosperity that we've gotten from this automation, from this technological innovation, the technology upheaval, and use that prosperity to give everyone a living wage just for being there, just for being a citizen. And I know you've probably heard about this before because the idea is not new. A lot of economists have been talking about it for a long time, both on the left and the right, both neoliberals and socialists. Everybody's been talking about it. What the critics say is that if you give everyone money for nothing, then they will probably do nothing. But here's the catch. The universal basic income has been tested in many places in the world. And everywhere where it's been tested, it shows a starkly different reality. Once they stop competing for resources, once they stop competing for a livelihood, people start to focus on doing the activities that they like, doing the things that they enjoy, and they enjoy them, so they work harder at them, they become better at them. And in time, they figure out ways to monetize these activities. They figure out ways to participate in the economy by doing exactly what they love. And they can create alternate labor. Like in the situation of my taxi driver who just wanted to write. If he can write a book and sell it, then everything he gets on top of that universal basic income is his. If he can't, he'd at least be satisfied with what he's doing. And there's other ideas around it. It's the idea of reducing the workload, working less than 40 hours a week so we can dedicate more time to ourselves and what we want to do, dedicating more time to our families. Now, I look around and I imagine that most of you work more than 40 hours a week. This automation that I was talking about is probably going to make you work even more than 40 hours a week because you're going to be the people who are so specialized that you can't be replaced. Another thing that could happen is educational incentives. So not only giving people a free university education, but also giving them incentives to go to school, to go to university, so they become more adaptable to the economy of tomorrow. Another idea is to use public works, and not just in terms of infrastructure as in highways, like it was used in the 50s. but cultural infrastructure, investment in culture, money to be given out for people to try to become artists, writers, poets, actors. Italy has actually pledged 1 billion euros for investment in cultural infrastructure. And that doesn't only make sense from a national pride perspective. It makes sense from an economic perspective also. Because when we go to Italy, we definitely know that we're going to see at least one museum. So, I'd like to leave you on this thought. Economists say that there's 3 reasons why we work, 3 large reasons. And the first one is to produce goods for the economy. As we've seen before, automation can take care of that. The second reason is to create a personal income by which we live off of, to create a livelihood. Hopefully, the universal basic income would cover that also. Now, the third reason we work is to find a personal purpose. And I'd like to let that sink in for a second. What would it be like if the only reason why we work is to find a purpose, is to do something meaningful, is to do something that makes us feel fulfilled? So it's not about survival, it's about doing what you love. The best advice that I ever got, the best guiding question that somebody ever asked me, is what I would do if money was not important. And it's a luxury that I can afford. I can afford to ask myself that question. But a lot of people around us can't afford to do that. So they go into jobs that they hate to get money that they use to live a life that they don't like. This is a chance to really change the way the society works, and not just for us, but for the millions of people who do stuff just because they need an income. Thank you very much.